Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Angela Brennan and today I'm bringing you a video on the Yana's Amaryllis Etched dies. This is part of the Amaryllis Christmas collection by Yana Smakula. So this is the first of 3 videos I'm going to do. So the first is on the dies, the second will be on the festive poinsettias background on better press plate, and the third will be on the Amaryllis Garden 3D embossing folder, which will encompass a whole load of embossing folder techniques. I start off by die cutting the images with white cardstock. Now I didn't really have to attach the outline with the die and die cut it. I didn't really have to do that, and I realized that pretty quickly. So I've die cut it. I put some sticky tape behind the initial die cut because I want to color it like that, and now I'm using a gold card to die cut the outline. So the reason is, once I do the coloring, I don't have to be too careful in doing the coloring on the white cardstock because I'm going to put the outline of the amaryllis flower on the white die cut. So you will cover up all of the sins of my coloring that won't be so accurate. So you can be a little bit easier to color the white die cut because you're going to have this die cut, which is the outline of the amaryllis. You'll see what I mean. It's easy enough to die cut these dies because they die cut so beautifully, and if you got the right sandwich, it'll die cut like butter. I color these images with Copics markers. I did die cut them with Copic friendly card, so I'm using Copic markers. If you've seen my previous videos, I do collect my Copic markers by color families. So this is a rose color family, and I've got 3 colors that go with it. I've got a video where I show how I use Copic markers and the swatches I've created and the colors I have. There are so many Copic markers. You don't have to get all of them. You just need to be getting certain color families, and that will comprise 3 to 4 markers in each color family, and you can use it quite easily. I will include that video in the description below if you're interested to get into Copic markers. I find it a great way to color some of these crafting products that I have. So every time I color them, I do put the outline to see how it looks. Well, with outline dies, which is quite thin, I always put dots of liquid glue on it, and I do smudge it onto a scrap piece of paper and before I place it onto the die cut so it doesn't smudge and make a mess of it. And I think it works quite well. How beautiful does it look with the outline die and all of the coloring? So all the smudges and the way it goes out of the line, it doesn't really matter because the outline covers all the sins of the coloring. Here's a different outline color, which is pink, and it goes beautifully as well. I make cards with both of them in this video, and you can check that out. I just love this die cut. This amaryllis flower is beautiful. And here is another flower in blue. I did Google the colors of amaryllis flowers, and they do have it in pink, red, blue, even a white, greenish yellow. So I tend to use those colors. I like to keep the colors of the flowers that I color as close as possible to what it is available in nature. I didn't put the images because I wasn't sure of the copyright of putting those images in my video. So if you Google amaryllis, you will be able to see the colors that's available in nature for these flowers. Once you get these amaryllis flowers die cut and colored, and you put the outline on it, you can do a whole load of different color combinations, and then all you have to do is do the assembly of the card. And here is another die cut that I do. This is the die cut where the amaryllis is quite pale in its color. It's more white, and you just put a little bit of greenish yellow at the base or starting point of each petal of the amaryllis. I do later on add a slightly darker color to make sure it is more prominent because it gets a little bit too pale for my liking here. I do try the same color combination on the bud, but this time I die cut it with a slightly lighter green card. I try putting the color in the core of the petals again I'm not really happy with it. And that's the thing, once you start coloring your images, just leave it and let it see whether that is the color you want. And then you will see whether you want to add further color. Here for the blue amaryllis, I'm dithering whether it's going to be a light blue outline or a metallic purple outline. I do end up going with a metallic purple outline. And for this white pale amaryllis, I do add a slightly darker Copic marker YG25, where I add colors to the starting point of the core of the petals to give it a little bit more drama. So it's a bit more dramatic, the color, once it's completed, and you get a better looking amaryllis that is colored. In my opinion, anyway. Let me know what you think in the commentary below. I'd really like you to tell me which amaryllis colors you really like. I also add a bit of a pale green color pencil to the white die cut, so because I wanted to have more of a greenish hue in the pale amaryllis. I really hope you enjoy this video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, remember to press the notification bell so you're alerted when new videos are uploaded. Other than the core releases from Spellbinders, I do all of the Spellbinders club kits that are released every month, and you can see my videos in my YouTube channel. I do have a playlist for all of the club kits available for each month. Here's the Spellbinders Home for Christmas press plates. Now, I love hot foiling press plates as well. Unfortunately, the Gemini foil press, which is the hot foiling machine that I use, is on the fritz. I must say I have sent it back to Crafters Companion, and they really got good customer service. I called them, I told them about it, and they've immediately picked it up the next day for a small fee, and they will see how they can repair it. If they can't repair it, they won't charge me. Unfortunately, they do not have that product anymore. They've discontinued the Gemini foil press. So if it doesn't work, I will have to get the Spellbinders glimmer machine and learn to use it. So that's something I need to do. So for these sentiments, I just use the letterpress system to do the letter pressing. I'm not a big fan of letter pressing sentiments, but I do like hot foiling them. So initially when I do it, I feel the sentiments look a little bit too thick. So that's because I've got quite a bit of shims that come under the letterpress system, which is the letterpress machine. Now, I didn't think about it. I do end up doing it with, I think there's 3 shims underneath this magnetic plate. I do later on show in this video where I will remove the shims and do these sentiments again, and I'm happier with that look of it. So it really depends. If you've got quite delicate sentiments like this, I think having all of the shims in your letterpress machine is probably not the way to go. You'll see it later on in the video and I'll explain more. I use the coordinating dies that comes with the Homes for Christmas sentiments, press plates and die set. I love having sentiments that have a dedicated die set or die that can cut it off so close and well together. This allows me to have additional die cuts where I can put a little bit of a backup or layer up the sentiment so it gives it a little bit of dimension when I place it onto the card front. Now here is the assembly of the first card, and I make a big mess for it. So I start off by using the Altenew purple ink. I'm trying to do the assembly, or I want to do the assembly of the pink amaryllis here, and I decide to put some purple ink on the card front. While I do all of it, I do the ink blending, I do the embossing with the Amaryllis Garden 3D embossing folder, which is a lovely embossing folder. I do all of that, and then I don't like it because I think the pink and purple, they do go together. I just don't like how they look. So this is the beautiful 3D embossing folder, which I have a separate video on it to show you the embossing techniques that you can do with the 3D embossing folder. I embossed this ink blended panel by spritzing some water behind the inked panel so it softens the fibers in the card, and when you put it through the embossing machine it doesn't crack the paper. And to make sure it dries flat, I do put some heavy objects on the embossed panel when it's still in the embossing folder, so it'll dry nice and flat without any warping. I place the inked and embossed panel onto the card front. by cushioning it with some foam sheet. I like to put foam sheet especially when I have a 3D embossing folder, so that it's nice and flat on the card front. So because this is a larger panel, I do place the foam sheet or attach the foam sheet onto the card base, and then I put the inked and embossed panel onto it and cut the excess off. I like having embossed panels that are larger than the card base, so when you place it onto the card base, once you've attached it, all you need to do is cut off the excess and you will have a nice flush card front with the inked and embossed panel. And when I do all of this, I tend to use double-sided tape. I've had a few questions on this. I just find double-sided tape easier, neater, and there is no pooling or loads of extra liquid glue that could warp the card. I just don't like the look of it. So I find using double-sided tape nice and safe, and that's what I do. I use a large scissors to cut the excess that sticks out from the base card, because a large scissors allows me to cut it nice and straight. This is an A6 card, which is a common card size in the UK, and it measures 14.8 centimeters by 10.5 centimeters. And I just place the die cut, colored and die cut amaryllis with the die cut leaves as well, and insert a sentiment or place a sentiment from the Home for Christmas sentiments. I attach all of the various die cuts with liquid glue. I also use some dimensional tape for the larger amaryllis to have it pop onto the card front. I love this flower. I think it's really pretty, but you can use it for Christmas cards, obviously, but you can also use it for birthday cards for those who have birthdays around Christmas time. I do struggle sometimes with the cards that you do for birthdays around Christmas time, but using a Christmas theme or a festive themed card is not a bad idea. The dimensional tape that I use behind the amaryllis is not too thick. It's only about 1 millimeter, because the card's already got foam sheet behind the embossed panel. I didn't want to have it too much of a depth. So here I'm going to be putting the sentiment. I just want to compensate for the leaves and the stalk that's already there, or the stem of the amaryllis. So I'm going to be putting the dimensional tape only at the edges of the sentiment, so it will lay nice and flat on the card front. You will see a different version of this card later on. I'm not too happy with the light purple. I do add a little bit more color with the hydrangea crisp dye ink from the same color family, or the color set, ink set. I think I make it worse. You'll see towards the end of the video how I change up the color of that particular card. Here for the red amaryllis, I start off by doing some inking with the mahogany bark, because I wanted to have it a little bit of a darker base. So rather than just blend the ink in the corner of the card panel, I put it onto the base of the card panel, and I add a slightly lighter color, which is the vineyard berry. Now I don't do too much of ink blending here. I just want to have a little bit at the bottom, just to add a little bit of a base for the flower. That's what I meant for it to be. And then I do some embossing as well. I think this Amaryllis Garden 3D embossing folder, it's so pretty that not doing any embossing would be a shame. So I do use the same two colors, spritz it some water, use a paintbrush, and do a little bit of splatters in the background, just some light splatters. With these splatters, you need to kind of practice. Depends on the size of the brush, depends on how watery the paint is. It can really dictate the size of the splatter. So maybe a little bit of practice would be a good idea. And I add the sentiment that I letterpressed earlier on. For the next one, I use the notched corner frames. I die cut it first, and then I put it through the embossing folder, the same embossing folder, as a background to this blue amaryllis with the metallic purple outline. So again, I'm just doing a slight variation to the card assembly, and the sentiment is from the same Home for Christmas sentiments, press plates and die set, and I'm just assembling the card here. I've cut the leaves here. I've got the leaves in blue, but I've also die cut it in the purple metallic card. I'm not sure whether it goes, but I decided to try something different. Sometimes when I'm doing my card assembly with a die cut, I try something different because I want a variation in the cards that I put together. But I'm not too sure having those two dies of the leaves together works. But let me know what you think. I left it. I left the card as is, but I thought maybe I should have used one or the other, but not both. I would like to hear what you think of what this card especially. Most of the products I've used are listed in the description below for your ease of reference. I also have a whole load of Spellbinders videos in my YouTube channel, so do check it out. That includes releases as well as the monthly club kits. And I do enjoy using those products interchangeably, so you will see me use some of these regular release products in my club kits and vice versa. For the next card, I'm just placing a light grey panel onto an A7 card. So an A7 card measures 5 inches by 7 inches. So that's going to be the base of the card. And then I'm going to place all these pink amaryllises with the light pink outline, which doesn't have the stem. So I'm just trying to put that in the background of the card just to cover the entire card with the leaves in a couple of different shades of pink, the flower buds there as well, and with the sentiment from the same set from the Yana Smakula Christmas collection. It's a simple card, it's a simple concept. It's a little bit of work, but I think it comes out really prettily. Here I place the flowers with the stems going inwards, but when I do finish the card, you will see I turn it around and the stems or the shortened stems of the amaryllis all face outward when I put the card together ultimately. And here you go, here it is. I do like how it turned out. I think it's a really pretty card, and I do like that grey smaller panel on the base card. I'm going to start here by putting some splatter white opaque watercolor, which is from Spellbinders, and I do place that into that container you can see there. So even though it dries, I don't waste any of my splatter white. I can just activate it by spritzing some water in it, and then I'm going to use my splat box to do some light splatters. Again, with this, it depends on the size of the brush as well as the consistency of the splatter white, and that will dictate the size of the splatters on your project or card front. Here I want a really light, fine white splatter, so I keep the consistency of the splatter white quite thick. I do like how this card turned out. I do like the greenish or rather palish amaryllis, which is meant to be white, but it turns out more greenish here, onto the card front with the buds and the leaves. I think it's a nice simple card. It can be a nice Christmas card, or it can be a nice, in fact, even sympathy card, or indeed a birthday card. So it's quite versatile. I do like this card. It takes a little bit of work to die cut it, to color it, and to put the outlines as well. So if you want to, sometimes die cutting the base of it with some colored card or pale card, so you just need to add a little bit of color to get a little bit of shadow and light in it, will probably help. So I die cut this with light green cardstock, which is why I just put a little bit of additional color on it, and you can see the result here. This is my favorite card of the lot. I'd like you to tell me in the comments below which is your favorite card or which favorite amaryllis color that you see from all of the cards that I've created with this die set. This card is an A6 card as one of the previous cards. For the next card, I used the outline of the amaryllis to create a die cut on a panel. So I'm going to be using the outline in the outline of the amaryllis. So the outline, the detailed outline of the amaryllis will go into the overall outline of the amaryllis. So what I'm going to do here, once I've die cut the outline of the entire flower, I emboss it using that same embossing folder. And now I'm putting a guide onto the base card with my pencil, so I know where I'm going to do some ink blending. You probably suspect that that's what I'm going to do. So I use 3 or 4 distress oxide inks here, and I do some ink blending. And it doesn't have to be perfect because the outline of the amaryllis, or the detailed outline of the amaryllis die cut, will be the focus when I stick it onto here. So I'm just using some dark, I think it's a burgundy, a couple of orange shades, and a pink shade for the amaryllis die cut here. Doesn't have to be anything fancy with regards to the ink blending, because I'm going to cover most of it. For this kind of ink blending, which doesn't require perfection, I find the Distress Oxide inks the most perfect use for this type of ink blending, because you don't have to have a really detailed ink blending. So once I've done with the ink blending, I place the die cut onto the ink blended area. Again, in ink blending here, I put little dots onto the detailed die cut of the Amaryllis, because I don't want the ink to smudge, and yet I move it so it does smudge a little bit. But the glue dries clear, so it doesn't really matter. And I place the die cut and emboss panel onto it. And that's what it's meant to do, just to give it a bit more pop. For the embossed areas, I put a lot of dimensional tape onto the card front and cut the excess, so the embossed panel is nice and flush on the card front. And then here is another sentiment from that same sentiment set, which I've letterpressed earlier on. For the next card, I'm going to be doing pretty much the same thing with regards to using the outline of the flower and outline of the bud. So I've got a detailed outline of the Amaryllis flower and the flower bud, but I'm going to be doing two this time. So I die cut the larger Amaryllis first, the outline, and then I'm overlapping the bud outline onto that Amaryllis, and I'm going to die cut it. So you've got both detailed outlines there, and I'm going to do some ink blending on the card base. Same concept, but this time I'm adding the flower bud as well. I really hope you find my videos inspirational. Every product or every stamp or die or better press plate that I use, I like to show different ways of using it, and I would really like you to let me know in the comments below what you think of it. So this Yana Smakula's Christmas collection comes with a die, a better press plate, and the 3D embossing folder that I've already used. So rather than use it, I could use it all in one card or do it all in one video, because there are so many ways you can use it. I split it into 3 different videos. So this is the first of 3 videos where I show this one here, the Amaryllis die set. The next video will be very much on the festive poinsettia background, the better press plate. Now, because I don't have my glimmer machine, I don't show any hot foiling with a better press plate, but you can hot foil with a better press plate. So I do show different ways of using that same better press plate and how you can use it with different inks or without any inks. And it's got a coordinating stencil, which is really, really pretty. And for the final video from this Yana Smakula's Christmas collection, I show you embossing or 3D embossing folder techniques. I would really like to get some feedback on what you think of doing 3 different videos for one collection, and whether it really inspires you and gives you ideas on how you can put cards together. And it doesn't have to be what I do, but it can really sometimes spur or give you the impetus or whet your appetite or your creative juices to do something slightly different. And here is the card pretty much done. But you see, I've attached the top die cut with panel with the removable tape, because I want to do some embossing, but this time it's using some embossing paste with a stencil. So before I do that, I do some ink splatters with the splatter white, and then I don't quite like the fact that the splatter white is on the detailed outline, so I do put an additional detailed outline onto the outline that's already there, so you get a slightly thicker layer. But here I use some embossing paste with the stencil, and this stencil is from the stencil of the month from October 2024 Spellbinders Club Kits. I'm doing some partial stenciling just at the bottom. I'm just putting some embossing paste slightly at the bottom just to give it a little bit of texture, because I didn't want to use the embossing folder yet again, just a different way to use it. And now that I have my embossing paste out, I do use it for another couple of cards you will see later on in the video. So it is a nice paste that gives it a nice texture when it dries. Now you can use your heat tool on this embossing paste as well, and it'll bubble slightly, but I decide to let it air dry because I do want it to have that texture maintained. Now it's great to use all these pastes, but make sure you wash your stencil and anything that touches the embossing paste that you don't want to, other than the card front, quickly. If not, it'll harden and ruin the stencil. And here is an hummingbird texture stencil that I've had from Spellbinders for a little while now, but I decided to use it again at the base. So you see the earlier cards where I had the outline of the flower die cut. I didn't want to waste it, so I put that onto the flower. I did a detailed die cut on blue. This is a royal blue that I've die cut, and you can see that in the background there, that I'm going to put on this card front. So I keep it quite simple, this one. So just some embossing paste. I'm going to stick that die cut with the blue and white die cut of the Amaryllis die cut and put a sentiment there. So nice and easy. So I do all of this. I do leave it to dry for at least a couple of hours because I don't want to make a mess of it. So this one I end up cutting this panel slightly smaller and placing it onto a card front. So it's not going to be the entire card because it does warp slightly. So I'm cutting it slightly smaller for the card base, and the card base is an A6 card, so it measures 14.8 centimeters by 10.5 centimeters. Again, this is a very common card base that you can get in the UK. It's easier than getting A2 cards in the UK. I do like to use different card sizes in my creations. So in my next video where I show you the festive poinsettias, most of my cards are larger cards. So it's about A7 cards because the size of the festive poinsettia, that letterpress plate, is a little bit larger, and I don't like wasting all of that letterpress element. I initially want to put 2 flowers on it, but I think it's a bit too busy, so I keep it really simple with 1 flower. And here, once the embossing paste is dried, I just place it onto the card front with some double-sided tape, and you've got the card pretty much complete. You just need to add the sentiment and it's done. These kind of cards, you can do it quite like a mass produce these cards because it's pretty easy to do. All you need to do is think of different backgrounds, so you can go crazy with your ink blending colors here. It's really pretty, and I like the simplistic approach to this card. Next, I'm going to redo the sentiments, the letter pressing of the sentiments with a better press plate. Better press plate comes with shims underneath the stamping platform or the letter pressing platform. I think it's called the chase. Now, I removed that because for these finer sentiments, I don't think you need that much of a shim, and therefore it doesn't look a little bit too thick, and sometimes it blurs some of the wording because the wording is quite fine. So I do some inking on a scrap sheet of paper, which is a non-porous paper, and I'm going to be placing it onto the machine and putting it through the Platinum 6 without any shim. And the difference is quite obvious. So you can see the wordings quite finer because it doesn't have that shim. So look at how it's a little bit more pressed. I think it looks better. So I do all of the sentiments again, and I do replace them onto the cards that I've created. So it's easy enough done. So if I get my hot foil machine, I might hot foil the sentiments again and place it on the card. I do prefer, especially these kind of sentiments, hot foiled, and I will be hot foiling. It's more obvious here on this card because I see the sentiment quite blurred. And this card here, you can see I started off by doing a purple corner. I didn't like it, so I did a pink corner. I think it looks better. Let me know what you think. Here are all the cards that I've put together. I've added some gems and some of the cards, some splatters, and I've completed the assembly of all these cards. I really hope you've enjoyed the video and found some inspiration on it. If you have, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, remember to press that notification bell so you're alerted when new videos are uploaded. I do like varying my card sizes. So you'll see A7 cards and A6 cards are the most common sizes I do. But sometimes, because of the dies, I do some A2 cards as well. Do check out this set. I've got all of the links listed in the description below. If you've got any questions, obviously post that questions in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I've been doing lots of Christmas cards lately. In fact, the Spellbinders Club Kits from October 2024, it's also a Christmas theme. So do check out the playlist that I have. I've got 7 videos on the Spellbinders Club Kits. It's in my YouTube channel, but I'll put the link in the description below as well so you can check it out. And this is another set of 3 videos that I'm going to do, which is going to be around Christmas cards as well. I'm set for Christmas cards. Here are close-up pictures of all the cards I've created. I've got quite a few cards here. Do let me know which is your favorite. I love getting your comments. It really gives me the impetus to continue with my videos and creating more cards. Happy crafting, and I'll catch you at my next video. Do take care.